You keep starting over because you never stayed still long enough to finish what you began. Every new beginning, every fresh chapter, every time you tell yourself this is it, and 3 months later, you're back at square one, tired, frustrated, wondering why everyone else seems to move forward while you're stuck in an endless cycle of resets. You're not failing because you lack potential. You're failing because you're addicted to the rush of starting and terrified of the discipline required to stay. Starting feels like progress. It gives you the dopamine hit of momentum, the excitement of possibility, the relief of escape from whatever didn't work before. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. Starting over and over is not perseverance. It's avoidance. It's the refusal to stay planted long enough to let roots develop. It's the fear that if you commit to one path, you might discover you're not as talented as you thought. So you pivot, you rebrand, you chase the next thing before the current thing exposes your immaturity. And the cycle destroys you from the inside. Because every time you quit and restart, you carry the weight of unfinished business. Your confidence erodes. Your self-trust dies. You start believing you're incapable of completion. You start identifying as someone who tries a lot of things instead of someone who masters anything. And the worst part, you convince yourself it's wisdom. You call it finding yourself. You call it exploring options. But deep down, you know the truth. You're running from the discomfort of staying when it gets hard. Running from the silence that forces you to confront whether you actually have what it takes. Running from the mirror that shows you're not special just because you started. You're only special if you endure. Listen to me carefully. The reason you're tired of starting over is because your soul was never designed for constant motion. You were designed for depth, for rootedness, for the kind of growth that only happens when you stop running and start digging. A tree doesn't become mighty by changing soil every season. It becomes mighty by sending roots so deep into one place that storms can't uproot it. And that depth, it's built in darkness, in stillness, in the lonely seasons when nobody's watching and nothing feels like it's working. You think the problem is you haven't found the right opportunity yet. The right business, the right relationship, the right city. But the problem isn't out there. The problem is inside you. You have a commitment issue. Not with people, with process. You love the idea of transformation, but you hate the monotony of discipline. You love the vision, but you despise the valley. And so you keep starting over, hoping the next thing will be easier, hoping the next thing won't require the version of you that you're not ready to become. But there is no easier path. There's only the path you stay on long enough to see results. Think about a seed. When it's planted in soil, it doesn't immediately become a tree. It sits in total darkness, invisible, buried. If that seed could think, it would panic. It would wonder if it made a mistake. It would question whether it's in the right place. It would feel the pressure of the dirt above it and assume it's being crushed instead of cultivated. And if that seed could move, it would dig itself up and try a different spot. But the seed can't move. So it does the only thing it can do. It stays. It trusts the process it can't see. It surrenders to the darkness. And in that surrender, something miraculous happens. It breaks open. It sends a root down into the unknown. And slowly, painfully, it begins to grow. You are that seed. And the reason you keep starting over is because you keep digging yourself up before the breakthrough happens. You feel the pressure and assume you're dying when actually you're germinating. You feel the darkness and assume you're forgotten when actually you're being prepared. The discomfort you're running from is not evidence that you're in the wrong place. It's evidence that growth is happening beneath the surface. But you'll never see that growth if you don't stay planted. Here's what nobody tells you about starting over. Every time you quit something before it's complete, you train your nervous system to associate difficulty with failure. You condition yourself to bail when resistance shows up, And over time, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. What used to take you 6 months to quit now takes you 6 weeks, then 6 days. Eventually, you'll quit before you even start, because the fear of failing again is stronger than the hope of succeeding. You'll become paralyzed, not by lack of options, but by the weight of your own unfinished stories. And that paralysis will convince you that you're broken, that you're not cut out for greatness, that maybe you should just settle for safety. But you're not broken. You're just untrained. You've never been taught how to endure the middle. The part where the excitement fades and the work begins. The part where nobody's cheering and the results aren't visible yet. The part where you have to choose yourself even when it feels pointless. That's where champions are made. Not at the starting line, in the middle, in the mud, in the mundane repetition that nobody sees and nobody celebrates. Let me tell you about a craftsman. He's sharpening a blade. The first few strikes against the stone feel productive. Sparks fly. Metal scrapes. It looks like progress. But after a while, it stops being exciting. It's just the same motion over and over. Scrape, rinse, repeat. An amateur would quit. They'd say the blade is sharp enough. They'd move on to the next project. But the master knows something the amateur doesn't. The difference between a blade that cuts and a blade that conquers is not in the first 100 strokes. It's in the 1,000 strokes after it stops feeling like progress. You are that blade. And life is sharpening you, but you keep pulling away from the stone because it's uncomfortable, because it's repetitive, because it doesn't look like the highlight reel you imagined. So you stay dull, you stay unfinished, and you wonder why nothing in your life has an edge. Staying doesn't mean you ignore when something is truly wrong. It doesn't mean you force a dead relationship or a toxic environment, but it does mean you stop confusing difficulty with misalignment. It means you stop treating every challenge as a sign to pivot. It means you develop the discernment to know the difference between a season of testing and a direction that's truly off. And here's how you know the difference. If you're running because it's hard, you're running from your destiny. If you're running because it's destroying your soul, you're running toward it. One is fear, the other is wisdom. Learn to tell them apart. Most people never learn this distinction. They spend their entire lives confusing discomfort with danger. They mistake the burn of growth for the pain of death. And so they run, they change careers every 2 years. They switch relationships every time conflict arises. They move cities hoping geography will solve internal problems. But no matter where they go, they take themselves with them. The same fears, the same patterns, the same inability to commit when commitment demands sacrifice. And the tragedy is this: they die with potential still locked inside them, with books unwritten, with businesses never built, with relationships never deepened, with destinies never fulfilled. Not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked endurance. Don't let that be you. You've already started over enough times to know that starting over doesn't fix anything. It just resets the clock. It gives you a temporary escape from the consequences of quitting, but it doesn't teach you how to finish. And life doesn't reward starters, it rewards finishers. It rewards the people who stay when staying is the hardest thing they've ever done. Let me tell you about another person, someone who kept starting businesses and shutting them down. One year it was coaching. The next year it was e-commerce, then real estate, then content creation. Each time the same pattern. Excitement in month 1, doubt in month 3, excuses in month 6, and by month 9, they were already researching the next thing, convincing themselves that this time would be different, that they finally found their calling. But it was never about the calling. It was about the character. They hadn't developed the patience to see anything through. They hadn't built the mental toughness to endure seasons of invisibility. And then one day, something shifted. They didn't find a new opportunity. They found a new mindset. They decided that whatever they started next, they would commit to for 3 years minimum, no matter what. No pivoting, no quitting, no excuses. Just 3 years of relentless focus on one thing. And you know what happened? The first year was brutal. Nothing worked the way they hoped. Revenue was inconsistent. Progress was slow, but they stayed. Year 2 brought small wins. Momentum started building. Systems started working. Confidence started growing. And by year 3, they had built something sustainable, something profitable, something they were proud of. But here's the key. The opportunity didn't change. They changed. The market didn't get easier. They got stronger. The path didn't become clearer. They became more committed. And that's what you need to understand. You don't need a better opportunity. You need a better version of yourself. The version that doesn't quit when it gets hard. The version that sees obstacles as assignments instead of rejections. The version that treats commitment like oxygen instead of a cage. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. How many dreams have you abandoned not because they were wrong, but because they required a version of you that you weren't ready to become? If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. You weren't meant to live a life of endless beginnings. You were meant to see something through, to finish what you started, to build something so solid that when the storms come, it stands. And the only way to build that kind of life is to stop treating commitment like a prison and start treating it like the foundation of everything you've ever wanted. Because here's the secret nobody's telling you. The power is not in the new start. The power is in the follow through. The discipline to show up on day 300 when it feels like nothing's happening. The courage to keep watering a seed that hasn't sprouted yet. The faith to believe that unseen progress is still progress. You think you need a new opportunity. But what you actually need is a new relationship with time. You need to stop expecting instant results and start honoring slow growth. You need to stop measuring success by how fast you rise and start measuring it by how deep your roots go. A lion cub doesn't wake up one day and dominate the savannah. It spends years learning, watching, failing, getting knocked down by prey it thought it could catch, bleeding from fights it wasn't ready for, limping back to the pride with wounds that teach lessons words never could. But it doesn't quit being a lion. It doesn't decide to become a gazelle because hunting is hard. It stays in its identity. It learns from every failure, and eventually the instinct kicks in. The strength develops, the roar deepens, and what once seemed impossible becomes natural. You are that lion, but you keep abandoning your identity every time the hunt gets difficult. You keep comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. You keep forgetting that the lion you're meant to become is being forged in these exact moments of struggle. So stop restarting. Stop running. Stop treating every setback like it's a sign you're on the wrong path. Sometimes the setback is the path. Sometimes the delay is the preparation. Sometimes the thing that feels like it's breaking you is actually the thing that's building you. I'm not telling you to suffer for no reason. I'm telling you to suffer with purpose, to let the pressure shape you instead of crush you, to understand that the potter doesn't put the clay on the wheel to destroy it. He puts it there to form it. And the wheel spins fast. The pressure is intense. The clay feels like it's being torn apart. But the potter's hands are steady. He knows exactly how much pressure to apply. He knows exactly when to pull back. And if the clay trusts the process, it becomes something beautiful. You are that clay. and life is the potter. But you keep jumping off the wheel because the spinning makes you dizzy, because the pressure feels unbearable, because you can't see the final form yet. So you stay shapeless, you stay unfinished, and you blame the wheel for your formlessness. But the wheel isn't the problem. Your impatience is. Greatness is not built in moments. It's built in seasons. Long seasons of showing up when you don't feel like it. Long seasons of doing the work when nobody's applauding. Long seasons of believing in a future you can't see yet because the evidence isn't there yet. Long seasons of choosing discipline over comfort. Long seasons of watering seeds in secret while everyone else is harvesting in public. And I know that's not what you want to hear. You want the shortcut, the hack, the thing that makes it easier, the 5-step formula, the overnight success, the viral moment. But there is no easier. There's only endurance. There's only the willingness to outlast your own doubt, to outlast the voices that say you're wasting your time, to outlast the temptation to start over one more time. Because the people who win in life are not the most talented, they're the most stubborn. They're the ones who refused to quit when quitting made sense. They're the ones who stayed planted when every instinct screamed to move. They're the ones who trusted the process more than they trusted their feelings. And you can be one of those people. But only if you decide right now that this is the last time you start over, that this is the moment you commit, not to perfection, not to never struggling, but to staying, to enduring, to seeing it through no matter how long it takes. Think about the forest. It doesn't grow in a day. It grows in silence. Year after year, ring after ring, no applause, no audience, just slow, steady, relentless growth. The oak tree doesn't complain that it's not growing fast enough. The pine doesn't compare its height to the redwood. Each tree focuses on one thing, deepening its roots and reaching toward light. And when the storm comes, the forest stands. Not because it avoided hardship, but because it rooted itself so deeply that nothing could shake it. You have the capacity to be that forest, to grow in silence, to build in obscurity, to become so rooted in your purpose that external chaos can't disturb your internal peace. But you'll never become that forest if you keep uprooting yourself every time the weather changes. Staying is an act of faith. It's believing that what you can't see yet is more real than what you can see. It's trusting that the delay is not denial, that the silence is not abandonment, that the struggle is not evidence of failure. It's choosing to believe that somewhere beneath the surface, roots are forming, strength is building, character is developing. And I know some of you have been in the same place for years, and it feels like nothing's happening. You've worked hard. You've stayed faithful. You've done everything you know to do. And the results still aren't there. The bank account hasn't changed. The relationship hasn't healed. The business hasn't taken off. The breakthrough hasn't come. So you're wondering if you should quit, if you should move on, if you misheard the calling, if you're wasting your time. But let me ask you something. What if you're 1 week away from the breakthrough? What if the harvest is just beneath the surface and you can't see it yet? What if the reason it's taking so long is because what's being built inside you is so significant that it requires more time than you thought? What if your delay is not rejection but preparation for a level of responsibility you're not ready for yet? You don't know how close you are. And that's exactly why you have to stay. Because the moment you quit could be the moment right before everything shifts. The moment right before the door opens. The moment right before the seed breaks through the soil. And if you walk away now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you had just held on a little longer. You'll watch someone else finish what you started. You'll see someone else walk through the door you were standing in front of. And you'll carry the regret of knowing you were almost there. Don't let that be your story. Let your story be the one about the person who was tired, who was frustrated, who wanted to quit 1,000 times, but didn't Let your story be the one that inspires someone else to stay when staying feels impossible. Let your story be proof that endurance wins, that faithfulness pays off, that the ones who finish are the ones who inherit the promise. You are not a failure because you've struggled. You're a warrior because you're still here, still fighting, still believing that there's more ahead even when the past has been painful. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's the kind of resilience that legends are made of. So stop apologizing for how long it's taking. Stop comparing your timeline to anyone else's. Stop doubting yourself because the results aren't visible yet. You are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you need to become. And when your moment comes, and it will come, you look back on this season and understand why it had to be this hard, why it had to take this long, why you had to be broken down before you could be built up. You'll see that every failure was a lesson, every delay was divine timing, every rejection was redirection, every closed door was protection. And you'll thank the process, you'll thank the pain, you'll thank the waiting, because it made you into someone who could handle what's coming. But you have to stay to see it. You have to plant yourself, root yourself, commit yourself, not to the outcome, but to the process, not to the applause, but to the work, not to the feeling, but to the faithfulness. And when you do that, something shifts. Not externally at first, internally. You stop being desperate for the result because you start trusting the rhythm. You stop needing validation because you start finding identity in the journey. You stop measuring progress by what you can see and start measuring it by who you're becoming. And that shift changes everything. Because the person who starts over constantly is always chasing, always anxious, always wondering if they made the right choice. But the person who stays becomes grounded, confident, unshakable, not because everything's easy, but because they've learned to endure, to trust, to build in the dark. That's the person you're becoming right now, in this exact moment. As you listen to these words, as you feel the tension between quitting and continuing, as you wrestle with whether to give it one more try or walk away, you're standing at a crossroads, and the decision you make right here will determine the trajectory of your entire life. So choose to stay, choose to endure, choose to see it through, not because it's easy, but because you're worth the fight, because your dream is worth the struggle, because the person you're becoming is worth every painful step it takes to get there. You are not starting over. You are continuing. You are building, you are growing, and the world is waiting for the version of you that only patience can produce. The version that's been shaped by pressure, refined by fire, rooted by time. That version is coming. But only if you stop running, only if you stay planted, only if you trust that the best things in life are not found at the starting line, they're found at the finish line. And the only way to get there is to keep going, one morning at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing yourself when everything in you wants to quit. So keep going. The world needs what you're building. The people in your future need who you're becoming. And you need to prove to yourself that you can finish what you started. Your time is coming, but you have to stay to see it. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more messages that grow your soul, subscribe, because your journey has just begun.